Hello everyone, welcome to the game 1 of the free round event, which made you play to tag, and it was 400 points. Go to the video previous to learn from more intricacies. So like I mentioned in the video, I took list number 1, which was general lead purpose, and the other list which was anti-Pano. We're not playing against Pano, so it's kind of obvious that I'm not going to pick a list with the Aquila and the Crooks. So we'll be playing the list, which I think is number 1 that I talked about. But we're playing against Corregidor, and my opponent is not super experienced, just to get this into perspective, but the list itself is built in an idea that you want to play Corregidor without playing guided. So keep this in mind, okay? So importantly, the list starts with the Gator and the Gecko as the 2 anchors and big toys for the points, because tag tournament we want to play with the big toys. Then Jazz and Billy are kind of self-explanatory because they're just that good. 2 Morons because that's why you play Corregidor. And then we start to get into the more intricate details of this list. So Mobile Brigada is actually really cool, I think, inclusion in the Corregidor list. I kind of figured out also in White Banner and in Vanilla Pano to some extent that nowadays, because Duo gives you +1 dice, you can do some really cool heavy infantry duos that you would normally never take. So I kind of was even thinking of like 2 orcs or like orc plus patsy, something like that in Vanilla Pano. But this kind of makes you wonder, like, Mobile Brigada, when a multi-rifle, because you need to take a lieutenant, it gives you a firewall -6, and you can just get a Mobile Brigada with a missile launcher to have some reactive presence that you normally would not have in the Corregidor, which I think is a sturdy heavy infantry arrow. It gets the job done. It does not cost you an arm and a leg, because you would need to take the lieutenant anyways, which would be doing nothing. But because you're taking the firewall -6, you might as well just slap in the Valeria Gromos as a 3rd fireteam member, which can then benefit from the firewall. So I think it's a good idea, like a nifty, cool idea of a Harris, and I like this execution. Then, because you're taking 2 tags, there is a need for the engineer, and my opponent decided, instead of going for the cockmaker with his own bots, to instead take a Gecko with the Wildcat engineer and duo. And then finally, to have some reach into the enemy deployment zone, there is the Senior Massacre, which will be the fireteam Harris. And then finally the McMurrow, which I think you should always take in Corregidor, and has any list that you can take McMurrow, he's just that good. Important to note is the Dactari, in order to revive the Mobile Brigada and anyone else. It will actually prove crucial, because it will revive the Mobile Brigada twice, at least once, which was kinda annoying. And then Intruder with a multi-sniper rifle. The only things I don't like about this list is that it's 14 models list instead of 15, and there is no smoke for the Intruder, or no smoke whatsoever. I understand that some compromises have to be made. If you're taking the Eclipse grenades, you don't necessarily need the smoke with the Senior Massacre, but like smoke shooting, especially in N5, I think it's so good that I would want to have access if possible, especially on the Intruder, and because there are like a lot of Mim6 pieces. But at the same time, Intruder gets the job done even without the smoke against things like Blink. The multi-sniper rifle against the HMG, kind of personal preference. I don't know which one I would take, honestly. It really depends on the matchup and your preference, so no really comment about there. So importantly, 14 models, I will be playing around 15 constantly, because you always have to keep this in mind. I'm not some I'm not some guy that I would put everything in the arm list. Important to note, no guided, so an award of respect to my opponent. My opponent wins the lieutenant role, because Joan with willpower 15 is she's not even close to passing. So they decide to go first, right? The reserve piece will be the Intruder or the Gator. I'm not super sure, but it's irrelevant. My reserve piece will be the Cutter, so it's like whatever. So from the right side, there's McMurrow, Mobile Brigada Lieutenant, Mobile Brigada with a missile launcher, which has some dominating line of fire, but importantly does not see this area, which will be important for my turn. Then there's the Valeria Gromos with a fire team, the Zonebot ready to revive the Mobile Brigada, the Dactari, the Jazz inside of the building with the ability forward at the 12-inch range, And then there's the Gecko, Senior Massacre, and the Wildcat next to the Gecko, ready to advance further. The Intruder was actually placed here, prone. For whatever reason, I'm not super sure why my opponent decided to choose this spot in particular, because there were no really good angles and it was kind of difficult for my opponent to get down from the building. And if it was meant for a reactive piece, then why would it put it prone? But you know, I was not in my opponent's head, so we didn't really talk about this before that. There is the Moran, number 1, Moran number 2. Importantly, the koalas are placed behind the Morans, which is, I think, what you should be doing, especially against more tech-oriented faction like Pan-Oceania, where it's more likely for the hacking to hurt me than the koala itself. So yeah, I think it's a good idea, because if someone gets to the Moran, then the koala should explode. It should not be possible to take the koala first, then take on the Moran, if you know what I'm kinda mean. But a mistake with the deployment is this Moran, because the 12-24 inch range is somewhere here. The Moran was not be able to put against the wall, and instead I think it should be somewhere here, because here is a position where I can, you know, take some shots against the Moran, which of course I will take advantage of. And if it was located here, then I would obviously not be able to dig it out, and it will still provide some uses. But my opponent was greedy and he wanted to go for big hugging area. So we counter deploy, and important to note is that the biggest threat to my list is the McMurrow and Senior Massacre to some extent, but not really, because it drags around the Gecko. But mostly the Gecko of Harris, which the only real way for the Gecko to advance is this way. It won't reliably go into any other position. And the McMurder is behind this building, ready to advance here. Importantly, with the group with the Gecko, with the Gator. So it's either Gator or the McMurrow. I will deploy keeping in mind that McMurrow is the biggest threat. That's point number 1. Point number 2, both the Gator and the Mobile Brigada are better than my reactive pieces, especially the Neo Terrorbolt. So I don't want to take the fight against those. So I don't want to take the fight against either the Mobile Brigada or the Gator, and I want to avoid this. And at the same time, I really don't want to fight against the Gecko with the multi-marksman rifle, because I'm very unlikely to put it down. I won't be able to outrange it because of how the table is set up. The Gecko will always get inside of 24 inches. And I just don't want to lose my pieces. It's very important. I will discuss this in my strategy video regarding the reactive turns, but those were the ideas that I deployed. So first to go is the Zulu Cobra with the jammer, ready to cover this sort of area. In order to help him, there is a baggage bot ready to reload it. And once the baggage bot is down, I put Fennec, so I can also reload disco balls if necessary. Then I finish up my deployment with the Neo Terrorbolt sniper. It covers just this area into my deployment zone, because again, I don't want to take those fire lanes. Yeah? I didn't want to fight against neither the Gecko, neither the Gator, nor the Gecko. I don't want to fight against anyone, if I can help it. The Helot Militia, I would rather for them not to die, but if anyone has to go, it's probably the Helots. So this Helot only sees sort of this area, which means that the Gecko has to stop there. So many GGs, by the way. And at the same time, the Bounty Hunter with the right stopper is here, and the Helot Militia covers sort of this area. So I denied my opponent's fights from long range, and I force him to come to me. And then the Cargo is located in the middle. I think what is important is that your strongest hitter should ideally be located in the middle, because it can then go either way. And then finally the Cutter will be located here in hidden deployment behind this box, because I want to take the shot against the Gecko if it overextends and just gets into out of cover position, because it's very likely for me to just one-shot the Gecko here and there. Well, maybe not very likely, I didn't do them out, but it's enough to make some hurt against the Gecko, okay? And then pretty much Blade next to the Harris, Engineer here, and Joan of Arc. Worth mentioning is that she's in the corner, where it will be the most difficult for my opponent to get a pitcher next to it. This corner would be kinda a no-go, because a pitcher could be shot at this location, and here the pitcher, you know, would have to be shot from like this angle or like this angle, and it's not likely my opponent will be able to find this angle, whether they will be even going for it. As I said, I always play with the assumption that my opponent will always make perfect decisions, but this thought never crossed my opponent's mind to isolate Joan. But I have a chain of command, it would not be the end of the world, I can tell you. So let's just get started into the round 1 for my opponent. So, round 1, the Gator quickly just maneuvers forward, ready to clear the way for the McMurrow for future, but because it spends the same orders as McMurrow, and I stripped orders from the McMurrow, I think. So the Gator gets out against the Helot, like moves sort of this way, reveals, throws a Discover at the Helot, succeeds and just obliterates the Helot. It happens. I decide to not do anything because it's more likely for me to survive the failed Discover than take a face-to-face roll, but the Discover goes through and the Helot just explodes. Then the Gecko, as predicted, maneuvers forward. The Wildcat, the Wildcat will be left here behind the console because this is a deadly dance. The Gecko then sticks around here, and my opponent does a mistake in sequencing, because if they would first move the Gecko, then by moving the Gecko and forcing my hand to reveal the cutter, they could then respond to the cutter. But instead they go the other way around, and first they maneuver the Billy through the building, on top of this building, and put him prone. It's very annoying for me. It's annoying for me because it's a repeater and I cannot deactivate the Billy, because at this point in time I was pretty sure the blade has deactivator. Apologies to my opponent. But Engineer also has a deactivator, so it will be very trivial to remove a pitcher. But Billy, it's because it's a model, it has to be killed by bullets. And for me to kill the Billy, I have to maneuver here, and I have to contest against the Mobile Brigada, and so on and so on and so on. Well, so the Gecko moves here, and first the Billy moves, and only then does the Gecko reveal to like sort of this area, and then takes a Discover shot against the Helot. At this point, my opponent only has one order remaining on the Gecko, and this is important because this means I can safely spring, well, not safely, but I can spring the trap with the cutter, take the shot against the Gator, I mean the Gecko, I completely messed those up. I take the shot against the Gecko because with the only remaining order my opponent has, they have to make a choice, either to hack the cutter, because the Billy is inside of the zone of control, or to retreat the Gecko and hope to score the quadrant. So it's kind of like a checkmate. Neither of these choices is good for my opponent. He will either waste an opportunity to hack the cutter, or they will sacrifice the Gecko and just let me kill him for freebies. I take the shot with the cutter, the Gecko responds to the cutter with the Panzerfaust, but it whiffs. I do a 1 wound to the Gecko, give or take. Then, like I said, the Gecko gets us to cover and spends the remaining order to maneuver into this position. And that's it, right? So it's up to my turn now. And importantly, the quadrants we rolled is I have this one and the nomads have this one. So I need to kill the Gecko. If I kill the Gecko, that's target priority number 1, I will deny my opponent's points for the quadrants, right? And I have to kill the Billy, because Billy currently threatens the cutter. In order to kill the Billy, I need to get rid of the Billy. And in order to get rid of the Billy, I have to also kill the Moran as I go. So, who's the man for the job? The Carhu. The Carhu is the man for the job. So the Carhu just maneuvers this way. It's safe from the Mobile Brigada because of this building. Climbs down on this side and maneuvers to this position. Whoops. It's kinda off the picture, but sort of this area. And then I take the shots from this area against the Gecko. I one-shot it with the Feuerbach, because it's Feuerbach. So the Gecko just goes down to my shots from the Carhu. I then maneuver the Carhu around, climb this building, get on top of this position, take the shot against the Billy, put it Billy KIA. The Moran tries to flash pulse the Carhu but fails. Or like, something happens, but pretty much it's uneventful between the Carhu and the Moran, and the Billy just goes down for the climbing Carhu, which then unlocks the cutter to take the fight against the Mobile Brigada. So that's exactly what I do. I remove the cutter, in cover, take the shot against the Mobile Brigada, get crit, take 2 wounds, stay around here. So yeah, that's tag for you. I then get out of line of fire again, try the same firefight against the Mobile Brigada. I put one wound onto it, and I start running out of orders. I need my cutter to be on this side in order to score points, but at the same time I want to kill the Mobile Brigada. Luckily the Neo-Terror bolts are in group 2, so the Neo-Terror bolt just takes the fight, puts the Mobile Brigada down, so at this point the Gecko and Mobile Brigada are both KA, and leaves me just with enough orders to climb the Neo-Terror bolt up here, first take out the Moran with the combi rifle bolt, and then take out the other way around. I first take from the ladder, I shoot the Massacre, Senior Massacre is located here, I kill him, then I shoot the Moran, I kill him as well, and then I retreat back to this position. At this point I have just one order left, so I can either retreat the Karhu and leave the cutter not in camo state, because I still have Joan of Arc coordinated order available, or I can just send the Karhu to death. Unfortunately Karhu is cheaper than the cutter, so the cutter recamos, and then Joan just pushes both the cutter into the building, pushes herself into the zone, pushes the biker into the zone, and only now I realize that I could have just get the Karhu down and break the fire team. But we live, we learn. At that point in time I was too fixated on having a duo and I just forgot that I could break it. So this means that I score 2 points to my opponent 1, because he controls the zone but does not have a tag in it. The cutter is now hidden in camo state in this building. So this leaves my opponent to salvage the situation, and here's what my opponent should have done, and then I will tell you what he did instead. He should have put the McMurrow in group 1 and then just send it against the cutter and hope to survive the jammer and possibly kill the cutter, because you only need to put one wound and then coup de grace. But instead the McMurrow runs all this way to kill the biker, gets glued for its trouble, kills the biker, then the Gator moves this position, takes the fight against the Neo-Terror bolt, kills him, the Dactari revives the Mobile Brigada, it gets up, and then the Gator moves all the way here to this side of the table to again control the zone. At the start of the turn the zone was moved to this area, which is very tiresome because the Moran is there, so it's kinda a headache. And also, whoops. Yeah, sorry for that. Don't know what happened. And Intruder also deleted the Karhu for what it's worth. So, Karhu, first order of business, moves to this position, avenges the fallen Karhu sister. Then the Fennec gets back, she takes shots, well... No, sorry, I think it was either the Fennec or the Gather, I don't really remember, it's not really super relevant. But pretty much the blade moved forward. At this point I thought I had a deactivator, I'm terribly sorry, and I used the deactivator to remove this repeater. The cutter was maneuvered from this position into the zone, so I would safely occupy this, and this left me with just the ability to kill the Gator. Joan luckily has an AP Spitfire, so she moves this way, gets into the position, starts just laying into the Gator. I have to maneuver through a flamethrower from the Wildcat. I try to take a shot at the Wildcat, I hit by the tanks, but I also tank the flamethrower, and at that point I'm safely hidden because behind this dumpster. It takes me more, like, all of my orders to put the Gator unconscious, that's what happens, the Gator goes unconscious. But I'm unable to either secure the kill on the Gator, nor I'm able to secure the kill on the Wildcat. But we're pretty much in a very dominating positions because, again, we scored 2 points because the Gator is in the zone, this time to my opponent 0 because Joan of Arc is controlling his zone. So, my opponent's turn, like already said, the Wildcat, after the Gator is put unconscious, the Gator just goes back, gets the Gator back up, then the Gator mine dispensers around Joan, and I think the Gator tries to shoot Joan at close range because she's frenzied, but she kinda takes like 1 wound and gutses or something like that, but it fails to kill him. Then it's finally up to my turn 3. And the cutter reveals itself and shoots the Mole Brigada for shits and jiggles, pretty much. And Joan of Arc first takes care of the Wildcat, who retreated here. Then she just moves in and shoots the Gator, takes another wound in the process, and if it goes NWI, but she finally lays down the Gator to rest. So at that point we call the game with some orders to spare, but again it's finally 2 more 4 points for me. And the score is like 10-1 question mark, something like that, but it's pretty much like 10-0, very deciding win. So few key points to think about is that like a sequencing on my opponent's part, and yeah, I think it's all around a good game. Even though it started with Cutter getting crit and taking 2 wounds, it still ended up with 1 wound because at some point I can engineer it with the blade. So yeah, I don't really have anything else to say about this game. Kudos to my opponent, and yeah, I think the comment is about like a speedball. The speedball, both of us call it speedball, but they did not do anything, for what's worth. Thank everyone for watching, and even though my list was not really discussed about, somehow we ended up extending 20 minutes mark, which I don't really know what happened, but kudos to everyone that stick around, and see you next time, guys. Bye.